In today's video, we are still going to be going over some really cold Arctic air on the way for the month of January, as well as multiple snowstorm threats. Real quickly, let's talk about my consulting company, Prestige Weather. We're closing out an amazing year with so many happy customers. If you're looking for more than the generic hourly or daily forecast that can be so frustrating and very broad, look no further than Prestige Weather. We help out individuals and businesses alike. If you're an individual looking for better, more accurate, and direct weather information, be sure to subscribe to our standard package. That's only $4.99 a month. You get early access to direct weather, seasonal, and monthly forecasts, also weekly one-on-one calls with us talking about the weather, and regional forecasts cater to your area. If you're a business, organization, or event manager, be sure to email us at prestigeweather@gmail.com or use the sign-up sheet on our website business section. We would love to work with you. We've been helping out so many businesses, organizations, and events just like yours plan for the weather ahead. We offer consulting calls, texts, and emails catered to your exact location of need. We will be on standby during your job or event and give you updates from start to finish. We also offer long range, medium range, and short range forecasts. We can help with rainfall and snowfall forecasts, plus the timing of onset and ending, which is so important. We pride ourselves on being highly flexible, and we're always willing to deliver on your specific needs. Put a meteorologist in your pocket so you no longer have to guess what the weather will do. Let's dive into things. As we take a look here, first off at our European model, we're going to be talking about this model run, the GFS model run. We're going to be comparing the snowfall totals through the next 10 to 15 days, and maybe even taking a look at some ensemble models at the end if we have enough time. We'll dive into all this, but let's just go towards tomorrow. This video is coming out a little bit late today, and as you can see, we have a pretty interesting situation going on in the Midwest. Me and my business partner over at Prestige Weather, which you just saw the very long promo for, we're talking about this storm in particular. It's very interesting because it's pretty impactful, but the low pressure system is very weak compared to some of our other storms that we've had recently. So it goes to show that the strength of the low doesn't determine the strength of the impacts, and you have to be prepared for major impacts regardless. It's always possible. Now we can see that there is a pretty impactful, little bit stronger low pressure system offshore of the east, and it's right around North Carolina at this point as a it's actually 1,003 millibar low pressure center. I need to change my pen size there, obviously. So there we go, right there. And we can see that this one is going to pretty much move its way up the coast. No cold air available to it as we have this kind of surge of warmth going on still before we get some cooler air on the way. It wasn't a hot Christmas. Here in Virginia, I can recall some Christmas Eves of years past where we were well into the 70s. And even 80, I think, one Christmas Eve about 5 years ago or so. It might have been 2016. I don't know what year it was. The thing about this winter that's been so interesting is it has been a warmer than normal one through December. But the interesting thing is that there hasn't been very super abnormally warm days. I can recall even some cold winters that had days in the 70s and 80s, and there's been nothing like that so far this winter, at least in my neck of the woods for Virginia. It's still been in the 50s and 60s, which is pretty typical for us. It's just been slightly above normal very consistently, I would say, is the theme so far. Pretty interesting note there. As we move towards Thursday, we see a 999 millibar low pressure center offshore of New England. So that is strengthening a little bit before it moves offshore. It becomes a little bit of an ice and snowstorm up there for New England. We're going to be watching that closely. Your jet stream by this point is a little bit inverted, but we see this kind of area of marginally cold air. It is below normal temperatures, and it's going to be a pretty far swing from what we saw here during Christmas. But it's not going to be super cold compared to normal, I guess is what I would say. It's not going to be severely below normal temperatures. It's going to be pretty slight in nature here for the 28th, 29th, 30th time frame. That trough kind of moves out, and simultaneously we have another more major one move in. So this one is going to be a lot more moderate to major in nature. This one here for the first 3 days of January. We can see pretty substantially below normal temperatures here in the east for this one, even featuring some snow showers around for the Appalachian Mountains. What's interesting is that we do get a low developing, very weak, but we do have some low pressure in here, some storminess. As of right now, the models are showing this one pretty suppressed, so it's too far south of the cold to really lead to any snow. but this is still 150 hours out, and I would say there is still some time for areas in this pocket here, if this storm does trend a little bit further north, to potentially see some snowfall from this event. It's not a guarantee at all, and it's honestly the less likely option here because we don't have any models actually showing it right now, but I want to point that out as a possibility. Again, I've talked about this a couple of times this year, but we have pinpointed some systems that no models are even showing coming together, but we can see the ingredients there, the cold air, the winds, the storm. If they all just move a certain way, they can easily transition into something a lot more than what the models are showing. And this is one of those situations where I think this could for sure become more than what we're seeing here, although no models show it. So again, the precipitation field is something like this and here. All that would have to do is shift west just a tiny bit into these areas, and you'd have a pretty deep southeast snowstorm, which isn't unheard of for further north in South Carolina, areas in North Carolina, Virginia, maybe even to Maryland, and the Delmarva area would be where I'd be watching for the more likely snowfall. The further north and west than that, the more it has to move from where it's currently being shown. So the reason why I'm saying that's more likely than this is because it would have to trend a lot further west and north for these areas to see snowfall from this system. Obviously, these areas are much more likely to be wintry on average, but in this particular situation, the further south and east you are, actually the better chance of snowfall from that particular setup that we're seeing on screen here. Hope that makes sense. By the time I reach Wednesday the 3rd, we see this trough lifts off a little bit with some warmth trying to push back. We do have a low pressure system trying to form here over Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And we can see by the 4th, this is all very close to coming together. We do get this dip of cold air and snow out west. Very intense snowstorm happening for the Rockies here by this point. And what this does is it creates a lot more warmth being able to push into the east. Not severely, it's still near normal to below normal here in the east, but we're not able to get deep Arctic air at the same time as this low moving through because we have this cold air out west. There's not enough cold air for everybody to see cold. So in this particular instance, most of it is going towards the west. Some of it is going towards the east. We would need warm air in the west for a good setup here. So that way all the cold comes into the east. So it's all a balancing act, and there's only a certain amount of Arctic air available. In this case, more of it is going west than east, and that is why we see less of a wintry setup. And this is another situation where I could see this ending up a lot more wintry than what we're seeing here. Just a little bit more cold in this area. This low trending just a little bit further northwest, and all of a sudden, things come together. So there's a couple of opportunities there on this European model run. The more interesting things happen here on this GFS model run. So I want to get us further in. Let's move towards the 28th through 30th time frame, which still this model has wintry activity happening at the end of December. This is exactly what we saw days ago, where this model in particular did have some pockets of snowfall forming as a result of a coastal low. We did not see this on the European model. We are seeing this on the GFS model still. So that is currently up for debate, but still marginally cold air, just like your European model for the end of December, with more severe cold coming in the days following here, as you can see. We actually do get a low forming along this quite a bit. So again, your jet stream is something like this, which is perfect. You have a low pressure system developing near Virginia and North Carolina. That's up a pretty good situation here for the interior east. Meanwhile, again, the European model would have a low way further south. So there's a wide variety of locations we're seeing this low show up. And I would say there's pretty good potential anywhere in the east for this to in some shape or form, become a lot better for snowfall. But also, there's a lot of potential for it to not be good for snowfall too, on the other hand. So that's why we're just going over all of the possibilities so you know everything that could potentially happen in the upcoming pattern. 992, but again, it's still pretty far offshore. If we saw this just 100 or 2 miles closer to the coast, all of a sudden you're talking about a blockbuster snowstorm potentially for the eastern states. That is how close we are to that coming together. But it's not all speculation today, and just talking about possibilities, because we can talk about some snowstorms that are showing up on these models. We see a deeper southeast snowstorm popping up here on this GFS model for Thursday the 4th into Friday the 5th here. Look at this low developing. You have deep Arctic air moving in, so we have the jet stream descending towards the east, moving in like this. And this again creates snowfall for South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. That's just kind of the pattern we're in. Very typical in El Ninos to see some storms setting up like that. So I think that's why we keep getting these projections of storms like that on these models here recently. We do get a bit of an upper Midwest system. It actually moves through the Northwest here to start things out around Saturday the 6th here, bringing snowfall to California, Oregon, Nevada, Idaho, some of the Rockies as well. By the time we reach Sunday afternoon, you can see it's a quick mover. We already have it over the Rockies. By that evening, it's in the upper Midwest. So low in northern Illinois, heavy snowfall for Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan there, eventually moving up into Canada. The thing to note here is that there is deep Arctic air beginning to move into the central and western states here. A bit of a ridge in the east here, but the factors that we need to consider is that there's a low here in Canada with a cold front underneath, and it pulls that cold air towards the eastern states as it moves eastward. So watch this. We're going to see that just continue to move further and further east, and then we get a secondary low developing along that cold air over, again, Virginia and North Carolina. And then it moves up the coast from this point, bringing pretty darn heavy snowfall. Another thing, and this would be a pretty major snowstorm here, as you can see, very far out though, so take it with a grain of salt to say the least. It is highly unlikely, almost impossible that it looks exactly like this. But the theme here is what we're always paying attention to on the channel, as I've mentioned many times. And the theme is multiple threats for East Coast snowstorms, or at least eastern snowstorms, and multiple surges of cold air diving down from Canada. That is the biggest takeaway here. We can see heavy snowfall up and down the East Coast, though, according to this model run, and very intense Arctic air moving into the United States at this point. So definitely worsening as we head towards the middle point of January. Again, late December, we see marginally cold. Early January, we start to see more marginal to moderate to even intense cold air. And then now we're seeing trends at late January, mid to late January, featuring intense and very severe Arctic air. So worsening over the coming days. Let's take a look at the total precipitation. We get quite a bit of activity along the west coast and also for the east coast. So the mid-Atlantic up through the northeast, seeing quite a bit over the next 10 days. Total snowfall, obviously on the European model, we didn't see much come together in the east. We still get some flakes flying and some snow showers for this area, even a snowstorm for New Hampshire and Maine, but really marginal out there. And we see the more intense cold and snow out west during most of the model run. The GFS model, which we see a lot come together, does have a lot of interior eastern snowstorms. And this leads to 2 to 6 inches in the blue, purples 6 to 10, pinks 10 to 20, and even your pastels climbing well over 2 feet of snowfall for West Virginia and even New York and Vermont. So certainly multiple big snowstorms here on this GFS model. And I want to revert back to the European model here real quickly. Even though we're not seeing much snowfall in the east, I want to also note that, again, we're on high alert for very small changes that could make things look a lot more snowy, especially in this area I just circled in, which is the area I've been focusing on for about a week plus. So nothing has really changed for the most part about what we expect in now the medium range and what was the long range when we first started talking about it. So the only thing that's changed is we've moved closer, but we haven't seen any big shifts in the models yet. I do anticipate potential changes that could lead to things looking snowier, could lead to things looking colder, but also, on the other hand, could lead to things looking less snowy and could change to look warmer as well. But we're going to be going over all the possibilities here regardless with you guys, as we always do. So be sure to subscribe. We're going to be tracking all of this daily. I don't have enough time today to go over the ensemble models, but I will tell you that they both look about the same as we've seen over the last few days. Still showing cold and snow opportunities in the east, same as we've seen. We'll go back over those in just a day or two and just refresh you guys on what to expect according to those long-range ensemble models. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload. Also, like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.